If someone had told Mrs. Wale that opening her door to a stranger would lead to the destruction of her peaceful home, she would have laughed. Because she had everything. A life people only dreamed of. This is the story of the Wales, a story that teaches us that sometimes, evil doesn't wear a mask. Sometimes, it wears an apron. The Wales were the kind of family people envied. Mr. Wale was a successful businessman, always traveling, always working, always closing deals. He was handsome, charming, and respected. People said he was one of the luckiest men alive. Mrs. Wale was no less. She owned a thriving fashion business in the city. Her designs were worn by celebrities, politicians, and society women. She was beautiful, elegant, and intelligent. They had 2 children, Muni, the eldest, just 9 years old, full of life and laughter, and Tunde, a playful, sweet boy of 5. Their house stood tall in one of the best estates in Lagos. High walls, iron gates, security cameras, a garden with roses, a big kitchen with shining tiles. To the outside world, it looked like heaven. But what people didn't see was the loneliness. Mr. Wale was hardly home. Mrs. Wale was always busy. Even when they sat at the same table, they were on their phones, taking calls, or checking emails. The children had nannies, but they missed their parents. The marriage was slowly, quietly drying up, though neither of them spoke about it. One evening, while Mrs. Wale sat alone at the dining table, pushing cold rice around her plate, she sighed. "I'm tired of this life," she whispered. "I can't even sit down and eat good food anymore." The decision came slowly, almost casually. "Let's hire a chef," she told her husband over the phone one night. "A live-out chef," she insisted. "Someone who will come 3 times a week, cook, and go. No living in. I don't want more strangers in my house." Mr. Wale agreed. He didn't argue because he barely had time to care. Days later, interviews began. Several cooks came. Some were too young. Some were too proud. Some were not good enough. None of them felt right. Mrs. Wale almost gave up. But life has a way of giving you what you're not looking for. What they didn't know was that someone had been watching them for years. Someone who knew their names, their routines, their children, their secrets. Someone who wasn't just looking for a job, but for revenge. And that someone was already on her way to their doorstep. It started on a quiet morning. A new day, just like any other. The birds sang. The children played. The city roared in the distance. And then, Kimi arrived. She was the last person on the list. The woman no one was expecting. She came in quietly, dressed in a simple gown, her hair tied back, her voice soft and polite. "Good morning, Ma," she greeted, bowing slightly to Mrs. Wale. There was nothing special about her appearance. No jewelry. No fancy shoes. Just a calm, humble woman, one you'd never look at twice. But Mrs. Wale didn't smile. She had already seen too many cooks who came and failed. She folded her arms and looked Kimi up and down. "What's your name?" she asked. "Kimi, Ma. Where did you work before?" "I used to cook for a small family in Ikeja, Ma," Kimi said gently. "But they relocated to London, so I had to look for another opportunity." Mrs. Wale narrowed her eyes. "And before that?" "Before that, I worked in a small catering service. I've been cooking for many years, Ma. Cooking is something I love deeply." Her voice was soft but steady. Her hands were folded politely in front of her. Not too confident. Not too desperate. Mrs. Wale sighed. Something in her heart still hesitated. She didn't really like bringing strangers into her home. Especially to cook for her children. She rubbed her forehead, uncertain. "I don't know," she murmured, half to herself. But then Kimi added softly, "Ma, I understand your concerns. You can give me a trial, just one meal. If you're not satisfied, I will quietly leave. No trouble, Ma. It was the way she said it, humble, no pressure. Not the pushy type. Not the dramatic type. Mrs. Wale paused for a long moment. And then she nodded slowly. Okay, just a trial, she said at last. From the moment Kimi began to cook, everything changed. The smell of spices and fresh vegetables filled the air. The sound of pots clinking softly. The aroma was so rich the children came running to the kitchen without being called. Even Mr. Wale, who hardly paid attention to food, smiled when he tasted her jollof rice and peppered chicken. This is delicious, he said, wiping his mouth. Where have you been all our lives? At first, it was clear. She was to be a live-out chef, just as Mrs. Wale wanted. Come 3 times a week. Cook. Clean the kitchen. Go home. And for the first few weeks, that's exactly what happened. Kimi came in the mornings. She wore the same modest clothes. She never overstepped. She greeted everyone politely, cooked the meals, packed her bag, and left quietly before evening. The children loved her. The house staffs liked her gentle nature. Even the busy Mr. Wale noticed how peaceful the home felt when she was around. But life has a way of changing plans. One evening, as the sky darkened, Lagos rains poured without warning. Thunder, lightning, flooded streets. Kimi, who had stayed a little longer that day to bake for the children, looked out the window, stranded. Madam, I'm so sorry. I can't get a cab. The streets are flooded. Mrs. Wale, watching her from the living room, felt something stir. Pity, maybe. Or maybe the simple kindness of another woman to a woman. Don't worry, she said. Stay the night. The guest room is free. That night, the first thread of Kimi's plan was woven. The next morning, after helping to prepare breakfast, Kimi left as usual. But the memory of her dedication and gentle presence stayed with Mrs. Wale. A few days later, it happened again. A last-minute dinner party. A late arrival. Another overnight stay. Soon, without anyone really noticing, it became normal. Kimi was no longer the live-out chef. She was part of the house. Living there. Moving through the rooms like she belonged. But what no one saw, not the children, not the husband, not even Mrs. Wale, was that every move Kimi made was calculated. Every smile, every bow, every meal. It was all part of a plan she had been building for years. She had found them. She had entered their home. And soon, she would begin the next step. That night, alone in the guest room, Kimi sat in the dark. Her eyes didn't blink. Her hands rested gently on her lap. And on her lips, a strange, soft smile. Finally, she whispered. Finally, I'm here. By the time Kimi officially moved into the Wales home, everything seemed perfect. The children adored her. The house glowed with the warm scent of freshly baked bread and rich, spicy stews. Even Mr. Wale, usually distant, began to notice that their home felt different. More peaceful. More organized. More complete. But what they didn't realize was that not every calm is a blessing. Some calms are the silence before a storm. The first few weeks passed without trouble. Kimi woke early, prepared the children's meals, tidied the kitchen, served the family with a gentle smile. Her hands were always busy. Her voice was always soft. Never rude. Never loud. She was everything a family could wish for. But then, small things started to happen. It began when Tunde, the younger child, started falling sick. He would clutch his stomach after dinner and cry softly. The family doctor found nothing wrong. They gave him medicine. The illness continued. Then Mrs. Wale, once vibrant, sharp, and full of life, began to feel exhausted. Her hands shook when she dressed for work. Her eyes were dull, her skin grew pale. She blamed it on work stress and overthinking. But deep down, something felt off. One morning, the family woke up to find their beloved pet dog dead in the garden. No warning. No sign of sickness. The poor animal lay still, eyes open, foam at the mouth. Mrs. Wale wept. The children were heartbroken. Even the house staffs whispered in fear. Kimi stood at the corner. Her hands clutched her wrapper. Her face was expressionless. She muttered, "Ah, sorry, Ma. This is strange." Oh. No one thought twice about her. That was when the dreams started. First, it was Nike, the daughter. She ran to her parents' room in the middle of the night, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mummy, Mummy." There was a dark woman standing by my bed. Her eyes, they were empty. She kept calling my name. Mrs. Wale rocked her gently. "It's just a dream, baby," she whispered. "Nothing is there." But 2 nights later, Mrs. Wale herself woke up screaming, sweating, shaking. The same shadow. The same cold voice. The same empty eyes. She told herself it was just stress. Or maybe the grief from losing the dog. But her heart knew fear. Soon after, the marriage began to shift. The once soft and affectionate moments between Mr. and Mrs. Wale turned cold. Small arguments erupted. Whispers of doubt crept in. "You're always tired. Maybe you don't care about this family anymore," Mr. Wale snapped one night. "Maybe if you were home more, you'd notice what's happening," Mrs. Wale shot back, her voice trembling with exhaustion. They fought quietly, then loudly. The children heard. The house grew heavier with every passing day. Through it all, Kimi remained the calm center of the storm. She cooked. She listened. "Ah, madam, I'm so sorry," she murmured when Mrs. Wale complained of her tiredness. "Let me make you herbal tea. It will help you sleep." She smiled gently. She served food with grace. No one suspected her. Not even for a second. But when the house slept, when the last light was switched off, Kimi would sit alone in her small guest room. She would open her old leather pouch. She would light a tiny black candle. Her fingers would trace the edges of a faded photograph. Her lips would whisper words older than time. The shadows in the room would shift slightly, almost as if something unseen was listening. She smiled softly to herself. "We are getting closer," she whispered into the dark. "Very soon, they will know the pain they gave me." By the 4th week, the Wale family was no longer the family people admired. The once beautiful home was now filled with sickness, silence, and sorrow. On the outside, nothing had changed. The flowers still bloomed. The expensive cars still gleamed in the sun. Neighbors still waved politely when the gates opened. But inside the house, something dark was moving. Something unseen, but felt in every corner. Tunde, the 5-year-old boy who once laughed and danced through the hallways, now barely had the strength to sit up. He complained of sharp stomach pains. His eyes became sunken. His skin, pale and cold. Doctors came. They took blood tests. Ran scans. All of them left shaking their heads. "Medically, he is fine," one doctor said. "Perhaps it's emotional stress, or something environmental." Mrs. Wale, too, was not herself. The once radiant woman who ran her fashion business with power and pride. Now she could barely brush her own hair. Her bones ached. Her heart felt heavy. Sometimes she would stand in the middle of her room and forget why she was there. She tried to smile for the children. She tried to cook once, but her hands shook so badly the pot almost fell. "Don't worry, Ma," Kimi said softly. "Let me help you. You need to rest." The housekeeper crossed herself and whispered, This is not ordinary. The mirrors in the hallway cracked on their own thin lines, like spider webs. The bathroom faucet turned itself on in the middle of the night. And the most terrifying of all, Muni, the eldest child, began seeing the dark woman in her dreams almost every night. One night, Muni woke up screaming so loudly the entire house jumped. Her mother rushed in, heart pounding. "Mummy, the woman. She was standing by my bed. She was touching my hair. I saw her eyes. They were empty." Mrs. Wale held her tight, brushing away her tears. "It's not real, it's just a dream," she whispered, though her voice shook. But Muni was not the only one dreaming. That same week, Mrs. Wale began to wake up gasping for air. In the darkness, she felt it, something sitting on her chest, something pressing down on her throat. She would turn on the lights. The room would be empty, but her body would still shake. Her heart would race for hours. She stopped sleeping properly. Her eyes grew darker. Her mind slipping, little by little. The tension between Mr. and Mrs. Wale grew worse. The fights started from small things, missing money, forgotten dates, tired voices. But soon they exploded into shouting matches. "I'm the only one carrying this family," Mr. Wale shouted one night, slamming the bedroom door. "I am sick. I am dying, and you can't even see it." Mrs. Wale screamed back, her voice breaking. They stopped talking most days. The children grew quiet. The home felt cold, like something had died inside it. Through it all, Kimi remained the same. She still wore her simple gowns. She still bowed gently when she served meals. She still prayed softly at night in the corner of the living room. When the children cried, she hugged them. When Mrs. Wale wept, she brewed herbal teas and whispered, "Don't worry, Ma, it will pass. Everything will be fine." No one suspected her. How could they? She was too kind, too humble, too harmless. But when the house fell asleep, when the last light was off, Kimi's true work began. In the darkness of her small room, she sat on the floor before a small black bowl. Inside, ashes, red and white powders, tiny bones, a child's worn-out toy, an old photo, almost faded beyond recognition. Her voice, soft but cold, chanted words that no one in that house could understand. Her eyes, dull in the candlelight, stared ahead without blinking. The next morning, when Mrs. Wale opened her jewelry box, she found it filled with dead cockroaches. The family's money, saved for the children's school fees, vanished overnight. The housekeeper, terrified, resigned without notice, claiming she heard voices of women crying in the walls at midnight. Even Mr. Wale, though still proud and dismissive, began waking with mysterious bruises on his arms. But none of them, not one, looked at Kimi. She was the one person they trusted the most. One evening, Mrs. Wale finally broke. She sat on the bedroom floor, hugging herself, tears running down her face. "I feel like I'm going crazy," she whispered. Kimi entered quietly, carrying hot pepper soup. "Ma, I made you something light. You need to eat." The moment their eyes met, something in Mrs. Wale's heart shifted. Just for a second. A small flicker of doubt. A whisper in her mind that said, "Something is wrong." But she pushed it aside. She ate the soup. She smiled weakly. Later that night, Muni handed her mother another drawing. She had been drawing the strange woman she sees in her dreams, and this is the second drawing based on what she dreamt. This time, it was worse than before. The drawing showed their house on fire. The dark woman standing in the window. And the family lying lifeless on the ground. "Mummy, I don't want her to come again," Muni whispered, her tiny voice shaking. Mrs. Wale didn't know what to say. Her hands trembled as she folded the picture. That night, in her room, Kimi smiled in the darkness. Her whispers continued. Her hands moved with precision. "It's almost time," she murmured softly. "The door will open, and they will fall." By the time the 5th week came, the Wale family was no longer just unwell. They were breaking. Completely. Slowly. Silently. The house that once sang with laughter now sat in heavy, unnatural silence. The air itself felt thicker. The walls, colder. And the woman they called Auntie Kimi, the one they thought was their helper, had almost completed her work. It happened on a Wednesday evening. The sky was dark, clouds heavy with rain. Inside the house, the family sat quietly. No TV. No chatter. Just tired faces and half-eaten food. Suddenly, without warning, Mrs. Wale dropped her cup and collapsed on the floor. Her body shook violently. Her eyes rolled back. Foam gathered at the corners of her mouth. The children screamed. The staff came running. Mr. Wale grabbed her, shouting her name, panic written all over his face. "Call the doctor! Call the doctor!" he yelled, his voice breaking. And right there, standing at the corner, her hands to her mouth in fake shock, stood Kimi. Her heart calm. Her eyes steady. What is happening? God forbid, oh. "Madam, stay with us," she cried, her voice shaking just enough to sound believable. But inside, she was smiling. The ambulance came. The hospital lights were bright, cold, unfamiliar. Doctors ran tests. Hooked wires. Monitored her heart. Hours passed. Finally, they came back with words that chilled Mr. Wale to the bone. "Sir, we cannot find anything medically wrong with her. Her organs are fine. There's no infection. No disease. So what's happening to her?" Mr. Wale demanded, tears in his eyes. The doctor looked at him quietly and said the words no African wants to hear. "It may not be physical, sir. It could be something else, we don't know." For the first time, Mr. and Mrs. Wale sat side by side in the hospital room, quiet and broken. That was when Mrs. Wale, weak and trembling, whispered, "I don't understand. How can all of this start at once? The sickness, the dreams, the death of the dog, Tunde's health, the money disappearing." Her voice broke. Do you think someone is doing this to us?" The words hung in the air like smoke. For the first time, Mr. Wale didn't dismiss it. He sat very still. His mind raced. Images flashed. The housekeeper's sudden fear before she quit. Mornike's drawings of the dark woman. His own restless, haunted nights. Something was not right. And both of them knew it now. That night, without telling anyone, Mrs. Wale called her mother. Her mother, an old woman from the village, arrived quietly the next morning. When she entered the house, she said nothing. She walked from room to room. She touched the walls. She knelt and prayed softly. After some time, her eyes, sharp and clear despite her age, looked straight into Mrs. Wale's eyes and whispered, "You've brought in a snake." "What do you mean, Mama?" Mrs. Wale asked, her lips trembling. "Someone in this house is not who they say they are. And the darkness is coming from inside, not outside." But while the family whispered in fear, Kimi continued her quiet game. She still cooked their meals, smiled gently, prayed in front of them. But at night, her rituals became darker. Now she no longer whispered softly, she chanted. She burned things that filled the room with strange, bitter smoke. She tied red threads and black feathers under the children's beds. And as she did, her heart beat calmly. "I waited too long for this," she whispered into the dark. "I suffered too much. Now, they will taste it too." The next day, as Mrs. Wale cleaned her jewelry box, something she hadn't done in weeks, she found something that made her skin crawl. A tiny black charm wrapped in red thread, hidden beneath her gold necklaces. It wasn't hers. She had never seen it before. Her hands shook violently. At that exact moment, Kimi entered the room holding a tray of tea. Their eyes met. And for the first time since she entered their home, Mrs. Wale felt something cold move through her bones. Something that whispered, "It's her." The words from her mother's visit would not leave Mrs. Wale's mind. The snake is already inside the house. And though her body was weak, her spirit had begun to wake up. Something inside her, something ancient, whispered, "Rise. Before it's too late." That morning, after the children left for school, Mrs. Wale stood by the window, thinking. She had been blind for too long. The nightmares. The sickness. The death of the dog. The missing money. And now, finding the strange red charm in her jewelry box. It could not be coincidence. She knew she had to act quietly. If Kimi sensed anything, she might strike faster. That night, while the family slept, Mrs. Wale locked herself in the master bedroom and did something she hadn't done in a long time. She prayed. With trembling lips, with tears running down her cheeks, she whispered, "God, please save my family, show me mercy. Protect my children. Give me strength." The next day, she began gathering. The strange drawings from Mornike's room. The broken mirrors. The leftover tea leaves she'd stopped drinking. The tiny charm from her jewelry box. She kept them in a small bag under her bed, a quiet collection of evidence. Knowing her husband would brush it off or panic, Mrs. Wale made a quiet decision. She called the police station and spoke to a trusted officer. "I need 2 men," she said softly, "to stand by my gate tonight. Don't come inside unless I call. Please, it's urgent." The officer hesitated but agreed. She didn't tell Mr. Wale. This was something she had to handle herself. That night, the house fell into deep, eerie silence. The children slept. Mr. Wale snored softly in bed. And Mrs. Wale, barefoot, heart pounding, slipped out of the room. The clock struck midnight. A soft breeze moved the curtains. The shadows stretched long and cold. She tiptoed quietly, slowly, toward the guest room where Kimi slept. But Kimi was not asleep. From behind the half-closed door, Mrs. Wale heard it. Low. Chilling. Words not of this world. A voice chanting softly, growing deeper, darker with every breath. Her eyes widened. Through the small gap, she saw a single black candle, flickering weakly. A small bowl filled with ashes, bones, and strange powders. Kimi, kneeling, eyes half-closed, her lips moving non-stop. The air around her seemed to shimmer as if something unseen had joined her in the room. Mrs. Wale pressed her palm over her mouth, fighting back a scream. At that moment every doubt she ever had vanished. It was her. Kimi was the darkness that had destroyed their home. Tears ran down Mrs. Wale's face silently. Her hands trembled. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. But she didn't move. She didn't confront. Not yet. She slowly stepped back, careful not to make a sound, and ran to her room, locking the door behind her. Outside the house, 2 officers stood by the gate, unaware of the evil taking place behind the high walls. Her phone trembled in her hand. One call, one signal, and they would come. But she knew she needed to be careful. If she made the wrong move too soon, she might not survive till dawn. The house was silent. The air was cold. But inside Mrs. Wale's heart, there was no silence, only the loud, crashing sound of truth. She had seen what she wasn't meant to see. She had heard what she wasn't meant to hear. And still, she did not call the police that night. She waited. Not out of fear, but because she needed to understand. She needed to know why. The next morning passed in heavy silence. Mrs. Wale barely touched her food. Her husband noticed her tension but said nothing, he was too worn out by his own stress. The children laughed softly, playing with their toys, completely unaware that the world around them was about to shatter. And Kimi? She moved about the house like she always did. Calm. Polite. Quiet. Her hands served food. Her lips smiled. Her voice remained soft. But Mrs. Wale's eyes never left her. She had made her decision. That afternoon, when Kimi stepped out to buy cooking oil, Mrs. Wale made the call. 2 men at the gate this night. Quiet. Don't enter unless I say so. The police agreed. Her heart raced. Her hands shook. But her mind was steady. That night, when the house fell asleep again, Mrs. Wale rose. This time, she was not just afraid. She was ready. She crept down the hall. Her breath came fast. Her knees felt weak. And when she reached Kimi's room, she didn't hesitate. She pushed the door open. There, kneeling on the floor, was Kimi. A bowl of black powder. Strange objects, hair, feathers, knots of cloth. A faded photograph pressed to her chest. Her lips moved in a language not of this world. Her body swayed gently. The air in the room felt heavy, like something alive. The candlelight flickered, casting long shadows that danced against the walls. Mrs. Wale pressed the button. The message was sent. Within minutes, the police burst into the house. They entered the room with torches, firm hands, guns ready. But Kimi didn't flinch. She raised her hands slowly. Her face was calm. And then, her eyes met Mr. Wale's, who had rushed down, confused and angry. Who are you? He demanded, his voice breaking. Why are you doing this? What is this? And that was when Kimi spoke softly, calmly, but with the weight of 15 years of pain behind every word. She didn't shout. She didn't cry at first. She just spoke. Her voice steady. Her heart bleeding. 15 years ago, I was nothing. A poor girl. Born into a family that had nothing to give. No land. No inheritance. Just hands used for washing clothes, carrying buckets, scrubbing floors. I worked in a small canteen near your university. I served food to boys like you. Students who ate and laughed and lived free while people like me served them. Then one day, you noticed me. You smiled. You asked my name. And I was young. I was foolish. I believed every word you said. Her voice caught slightly. You came often. You bought me small gifts, meat pies, soft drinks. You held my hand. You kissed me under the trees. And you promised me. Her eyes darkened. You promised me marriage. When I missed my period, I was scared. But I wasn't worried. Because you said you loved me. But the day I told you, you changed. You disappeared. You blocked my calls. Her voice hardened. I came to your house. I begged you. In the rain. In front of strangers. I told you I was carrying your child. She swallowed. And you looked me in the eye. And you said, it's your problem now. I lost everything. My family, ashamed, pushed me out. I slept on the streets. I begged for food. When I was 5 months gone, I started bleeding. No hospital would take me without money. I delivered that baby alone behind a mechanic shop. I held him. He was so tiny, so still. I dug a hole with my hands and buried my child myself. Her voice broke. I wanted to die too. But I didn't. I survived. I cleaned houses. I washed floors. I carried loads in the market. I became invisible. But I never forgot you. I never forgot your face. Your voice. Your betrayal. She wiped her tears. I heard you made it big. I saw your wife's photo online. I saw your name in newspapers. And every time I saw your face, my heart died again. I searched for you quietly. I used neighbors. I asked around like I was nothing. I waited. And when I heard you were hiring a private cook, I knew. It was time. Her lips curled slightly. I trained. I learned to cook better. I made myself small. And you opened the door. Mr. Wale's knees buckled. He fell to the floor, head in his hands. I didn't. I was young. But no words could undo the damage. The officers gently took Kimi's arms. She didn't resist. She simply whispered, "Now I can rest." They led her away. The door closed. The house fell still. In the weeks that followed, the family healed. The nightmares stopped. But the scar remained. Mr. Wale, once proud, became silent, withdrawn. Mrs. Wale, forever changed, held her children closer. The past had found them, and it had left its mark. In quiet determination, they took steps to close that dark chapter for good. One morning, without fanfare or ceremony, they cleared every single belonging that had ever belonged to Kimi. Her clothes, her shoes, her forgotten perfume bottles, even the bedsheets she once used. All of it burned, reduced to ash. A symbol of finality, a way to cleanse their home, not just physically but spiritually. The few domestic workers that remained were quietly relieved of their duties. No explanations, no arguments. The Wale family knew they needed space to heal, to rebuild, to redefine what truly mattered. Together, husband and wife sat down and replanned their lives. Mrs. Wale made the difficult but heartfelt decision to close her previous business and start afresh, something smaller, something flexible. A venture that would allow her to be present, to care for her home, to be there for her children, to fill the house with laughter again. They created a new family routine. Every morning and every night, without fail, they gathered in the living room, hands joined, voices lifted in prayer. It wasn't just about religion. It was about connection. It was about unity. It was about never letting darkness creep into the spaces between them again. One evening, beneath the soft glow of the living room lamp, Mr. Wale finally spoke. His voice cracked, his eyes heavy with regret. "I'm sorry," he said softly, looking at his wife, then his children. "For everything. For what I let into this house. For the things I didn't see. For the trust one broke." Tears were shed. But this time, they weren't the tears of betrayal. They were the tears of release. Of healing. Of moving forward. And together, they made a vow. Never again. Never again would they invite strangers into their most sacred space. Never again would they hand over the heart of their home to anyone else. From that day forward, they chose to walk the journey together, messy, imperfect, but united. The past would always linger in the shadows. But the future was theirs to write. Life teaches us that the pain we cause others, whether by carelessness, betrayal, or cruelty, does not always fade away. Some people carry that pain silently for years, wearing invisible scars while trying to rebuild broken lives. But sometimes, the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes, the people we use, abandon, or destroy without a second thought, they come back. Not always with violence. Not always with anger. But the damage we caused finds its way back to us. This story reminds us that we must be kind and truthful in all our dealings with others. We must take responsibility for the harm we cause. And we must remember that while we may forget our actions, others may carry the wounds forever. The seed you plant in someone's life today, whether good or bad, will grow. So plant carefully. Because not every scar is visible. And not every smile is safe. What would you do if the person you trusted the most was secretly destroying your family? Drop your thoughts in the comment. And don't forget, like, subscribe, and share this story so others can learn this shocking lesson. Thanks for watching. See you in my next video.